In this section, I will explain how Daniel Andrews bought a $1.9 million property in Sorrento and avoided paying stamp duty by using a trust structure. Stamp duty is a tax that applies when you buy or acquire property in Victoria. However, there are some exemptions and concessions for certain transactions involving trusts. According to the Herald Sun, Daniel Andrews suffered a fall that left him with serious injuries and off work for 3 months at a Sorrento beach house rental in March 2021. The property was owned by a trust called the Sorrento Beach House Trust, which was set up by his wife Catherine Andrews in 2017. The trust deed stated that the beneficiaries of the trust were Catherine Andrews and her children. By using a trust structure, Daniel Andrews was able to avoid paying stamp duty on the purchase of the property. This is because under the Duties Act 2000, there is an exemption from duty for transfers of property from a trustee to a beneficiary of a discretionary trust. A discretionary trust is a type of trust where the trustee has the power to decide how to distribute the income and capital of the trust among the beneficiaries. Therefore, when Catherine Andrews bought the property in 2017 for $1.9 million, she did not have to pay stamp duty as she was the trustee and beneficiary of the trust. She only had to pay $200 for declaring a trust over dutiable property. Similarly, when Daniel Andrews moved into the property as a beneficiary of the trust, he did not have to pay stamp duty as he was acquiring an interest in the property from the trustee. Using a trust structure can be a way of saving money on stamp duty, especially for foreign purchasers who have to pay an additional duty of 8% on top of the normal duty rates. However, there are also some risks and costs involved in setting up and maintaining a trust, such as legal fees, accounting fees, compliance obligations and potential disputes among beneficiaries. Therefore, it is important to seek professional advice before deciding whether to use a trust structure for buying or acquiring property. In this section, we will explain how the trust structure works and why it is legal but controversial. A trust is a legal arrangement where one person or entity, the trustee, holds property on behalf of another person or group of people, the beneficiaries. The trustee has a legal obligation to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries and follow the rules of the trust deed, which is the document that establishes the trust. One of the benefits of using a trust is that it can provide asset protection and tax planning opportunities. For example, a trust can distribute income to beneficiaries who are in lower tax brackets, or retain income within the trust and pay tax at a lower rate than an individual. A trust can also avoid or reduce stamp duty, which is a state-based tax that applies to certain transactions involving dutiable property, such as land or shares. Stamp duty is calculated based on the value of the property and the type of transaction. It can range from 1.5% to 7% depending on the state or territory and the circumstances of the transfer. Stamp duty can be a significant cost for property buyers and sellers, especially in a booming housing market. However, there are some ways to minimize or avoid stamp duty by using a trust structure. One way is to transfer property into a trust before selling it. This way, the seller only pays stamp duty on the nominal value of the trust deed, which is usually $500 or less, instead of paying stamp duty on the full value of the property. The buyer then acquires the property indirectly by acquiring units or shares in the trust, which may attract lower or no stamp duty depending on the state or territory. Another way is to use a discretionary trust, which is a type of trust where the trustee has complete discretion over how to distribute income and capital among the beneficiaries. A discretionary trust can avoid stamp duty on subsequent transfers of property within the trust, as long as there is no change in beneficial ownership. This means that as long as the same group of beneficiaries have potential access to the property, no stamp duty is payable when the trustee transfers the property from one beneficiary to another. These methods are legal but controversial because they can be seen as loopholes that allow wealthy individuals and businesses to avoid paying their fair share of tax and reduce government revenue. Critics argue that stamp duty is an important source of funding for public services and infrastructure, and that abolishing or reforming it would benefit all taxpayers and improve housing affordability. Supporters of stamp duty concessions argue that they encourage investment and economic activity, and that trusts are legitimate and flexible tools for estate and succession planning.